Hello and welcome to our 2023 Year in Review here at the beautiful UNBC campus, where for the next hour I'll be taking you through all the most important stories that we covered here at CKPG News over the last year. And to begin our show, we're going to start with the downtown explosion that happened in August, destroying one building and damaging several others in the block. 3 people were confirmed to be injured in the blast, including one city worker, and crews combed through the scene to determine the cause of the blast for several days. Cheryl Jan reporting.
At precisely 7:01 this morning, an explosion so intense it blew windows out in neighboring businesses, wiped out the former Achillean restaurant at the corner of 4th and Dominion. It was a building that had been vacant for more than 10 years.
Yeah, early this morning, right at 7 o'clock, most of Prince George, in fact, felt a large explosion that originated in a building on the corner of 4th Avenue and Dominion Street, right behind us. The explosion did level the building, which thankfully has been abandoned and empty for quite some time. So there's nothing current going on in there.
Northern Health has confirmed 3 people were transported to hospital this morning, only one of whom had serious injuries. Witnesses say one of the injured was a city worker who sustained burns and a concussion.
One person is being moved into what is called urgent care and is in critical condition. 2 people are in fair condition and are expected to be admitted for further assessment overnight, says Northern Health.
The investigation is underway, but police say it is far too early to determine a cause for the explosion.
The fire is being treated as suspicious currently by RCMP, so we will also be on scene for an extended period of time. We will have to hold the scene on the corner of the building where the building is specifically until it is safe for our fire investigators to enter the premises.
Prince George Fire Rescue say they will be on the scene for some time.
This time we haven't begun our investigation. We're still actioning the fire. First responder safety is the most important thing, so we had to proceed with caution. We had several hazards to deal with immediately, and at this time we are now slowly starting to clean and pick our way through the debris. The investigators will be here tomorrow. The police have begun their investigation, I believe, early, but until the scene is safe and the fire is put out, we wouldn't begin an investigation.
Meanwhile, the RCMP and the city are putting out a public appeal for dash cam footage, video surveillance, or cell phone footage of the scene prior to emergency personnel arriving, as those videos could be crucial to their ongoing investigation.
We're making a public appeal right now to anybody who has video that we have not spoken to or reached out to. So that's dash camera footage, video surveillance, or anything captured on your cell phone that could provide investigators with clues to how many people were in the building or came running from the building, who those people were, do they need medical attention right now, and also who was in the area, so that can further along our investigation.
Police are asking people to stay clear of the area. Anyone with information is asked to contact RCMP. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.
In the wake of their 12-year-old son's heartbreaking suicide in October, a grief-stricken local family was urgently warning parents about the dangers of social media-driven sextortion. Dave Branco sat down with the family, who shared their painful journey and pleaded with parents to stay vigilant.
Nothing is worth doing this. Talk to somebody. It's not as bad as it seems. Trust me.
Grieving parents Ryan and Nicola passionately urge fellow parents and caregivers to have sincere conversations with their youth about dangers of sextortion. In the aftermath of their son Carson's tragic passing, they share a heartfelt plea for open communication to prevent others from enduring a similar devastating loss.
Be more active with your kids, even if you are active, which we were. Talk to them about things. Talk to your kids about predators and all this stuff that's happening and the safety of online. And as much as younger kids hate their parents going on their phones, maybe we have to. I don't know, just to be aware of the surroundings. And, if they say, yeah, we're all good, maybe dig more into it and be like, how was your date? And elaborate on that.
According to Prince George RCMP, their investigation revealed that Carson took his own life in response to an online sextortion.
So they believe that the person talking to them on the other end of that chat is telling them the truth, that they're like age, that they're the gender that they may be interested in, that they have similar interests in life. Maybe it's the parents don't understand them. Maybe it's the sports that they're interested in. Because the people on the other end of the chat are con artists, and they're incredibly good at what they do. They don't have emotion, they don't have feeling, and all they want is to separate the person they're talking to from their money.
According to Carson's family, he preferred to use the platform Snapchat to communicate with others.
They're not built for problems like this yet. They're not built for adult problems in a kid's world.
According to the police, it's very complex to investigate allegations of sextortion. Therefore, education can be your best defense against predators.
Having to trace IP addresses across continents, and is this a crime in the country that they are residing in? So then we have to start looking at, international crime, and that can be incredibly time-consuming, and it's very resource-intensive.
In 2023, local police received 62 sextortion reports, exceeding the 2022 total of 56. If victimized, stop communication, deactivate accounts, and urgently seek help from local authorities. Needhelp.ca and cybertips.ca are websites where parents and children can go for help. Immediate action is crucial. Dave Branco, CKPG News.
On May 29th, RCMP announced they had identified the remains of missing Vanderhoof woman Madison Scott, who had been missing for 12 years. Caden Fanshaw was in Vanderhoof on the day of the announcement and brings us local reaction to the shocking discovery.
A discovery more than a decade in the making. RCMP on scene here, South Slope Road, southeast of the community of Vanderhoof, where they have found the remains of Madison Scott, who had been missing since 2011. Almost 12 years to the day since she went missing at Hogsback Lake, which isn't that far from where we're standing right now.
The RCMP and support services are currently on the scene of a rural property east of Vanderhoof, where it has been confirmed that Madison Scott has been found.
The breakthrough in this cold case comes after years of an intense investigation by RCMP, the hope never fading to find Maddie.
Well, this investigation has been active and a priority since 2011 when she was reported missing, and has never been closed, and we have been actively looking for her and information into her disappearance. And days ago it was confirmed, and then later positive identity made by BC Coroner Service that it was in fact Madison Scott.
From above, the distance between where Maddie was found and where she was last seen in May of 2011 is not far, 18 kilometers in fact. Still unknown how she got there and who she might have been with. As police figure out those details, the community enters a period of mourning.
Use that word closure, and it's not a great word for it, but it is what we tend to use, right? But I mean, it gives a different path. I mean, we can't change the outcome, so it does give you knowing what's happening, and you can move forward then and deal with it.
The discovery by police having a heavy impact on many members of this small community. Many knew the 20-year-old Scott, and others we talked to had similar sentiments.
It's kind of bad for the whole community, 20 years old. Somebody, she didn't get in, was she in the ground or in the lake or whatever?
Yeah, we don't know.
She didn't get there by herself. Somebody killed her.
People can hurt another person just for no reason. I mean, she was a nice person. I think I met her once because I'm just moved back here.
I feel like crying. I'm so happy for the family, though. Yeah. It's just their grieving has been so long.
Seemingly, everybody in town knows of the Madison Scott story, no matter their age. What do you remember from back when she went missing, I guess?
I remember it was very, emotions are very high because it's always been, a lake where, teenagers hung out and, had a lot of fun. So it was just very confusing. And I remember a lot of people, being really upset about it. and that was pretty much it. I don't remember a lot. I was in like grade 4.
You can see the driveway of the property where Madison's remains were discovered behind me. Police have set up a checkpoint. Extra resources are here on the ground. They will be here as long as they are needed, we are told. There's no indication of anyone in custody, any suspects in question at this point. The investigation still in very early stages. Caden Fanshaw in Vanderhoof for CKPG News.
Coming up on Year in Review, the topic of SOGI was a point of controversy for parents as well as School District 57 all year long. Welcome back to our 2023 Year in Review. Comments made by an unsuccessful School District 57 trustee candidate at a board meeting in February prompted tensions from the LGBTQ+ community. As Caden Fanshaw reported on, the Prince George District Teachers Association raised concerns about how the board handled the interaction.
The standards have been dropping, bullying is up, student and teacher abuse cases are up, drug use in our schools is up, the number of children that are having psychological issues is up, the amount of children that are confused about their gender is up.
That part of a 5-minute-long rant fueled with unsubstantiated claims by Josh Silva in December, leading to this response by the board chair afterwards.
Thank you, Josh. I want to say it takes great courage to come to the mic and say what you did tonight. You were heard, okay? And thank you for taking time from your life to come tonight to make sure that we listened.
Her response conveying a clear expression of approval to the rant. That leaving the PG District Teachers Association filled with outrage at what they call harmful statements against the LGBTQ+ community and the education system, coming after the board for not acting on it.
My concern was that comment that was made by Mr. Silva wasn't stopped. He was allowed to make that comment, and the chair of the board then thanked him and praised him for his courage.
The union also taking action on a provincial level, writing the BC Minister of Education on the issue as tensions between the groups rise.
Public education is for the public, all of the public. That includes folks who come to our school and work in our schools who don't meet the binary norms. That also includes people that attend our schools as students who do not meet the binary norms. We are to accept everybody and welcome them into our schools and provide education in an equitable manner. So I would like to have the board remember that that is their responsibility, and it is enshrined in the British Columbia Human Rights Code.
In a statement to CKPG News, board chair Rachel Weber said, quote, "The parents' views were their own. My intention was to acknowledge their participation in publicly expressing their opinion, not to endorse or agree with it." It's unclear what action could result from the complaint, not only potentially breaching SD 57 policy, but also the BC Human Rights Code. Caden Fanshaw, CKPG News.
The steps outside of City Hall were quite busy on September 20th as 2 demonstrations took place. The first was a protest against SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity education, and the second was a protest in favor of SOGI education. Adam Burrows was there and brought us all the details.
Repeat after me. Let kids be kids.
Emotions were high outside of City Hall Wednesday morning as a protest was held against SOGI. Over 130 people attended, and the group protesting says they support all children's rights to be educated in academics and their right to not be educated in sexuality. The protest in Prince George is just one of many being held across Canada.
We want to express our support today for parents who are involved in their kids' education and who do not want sexualized courses, sexualized SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity to be taught to their kids in schools.
BC Human Rights Commissioner Kasari Govender issued a statement on Tuesday calling the protests and marches hate-fueled and says that the human rights of trans and LGBTQSIA+ people are not up for debate. But David Lowe says that this isn't about hate.
If they want to come and see how hateful we are, they should come. And they will find out that this is really propaganda because they don't really want to give up the right to sexualize our kids in school. That's really what it is.
Counter-protesters from the group called PG Physicians Against Hate say hate has no place in our community.
The focus of our involvement in the demonstration today is really it's a message of inclusion, a message of affirmation. When we have discussions around inclusion in our schools, it actually makes schools safer for all youth and kids, not just for trans youth, not just for gender diverse kids, but this is actually good for all kids. And that's a really powerful message.
Dr. Ingrid Casillo affirmed what Dr. Mitchell Foster said, and that diversity should be celebrated.
I think we need to celebrate diversity. It's not just about, like the piece around SOGI and that sort of, it's not just, let's have some curriculum that includes and represents, the students. It's like celebrating diversity. How boring to all be the same. And what, this is something to celebrate. And I think that's what our demonstration or community get together this afternoon is about.
The anti-SOGI demonstration concluded with a march. Adam Burles, CKPG News.
And 2 more protests happened a month later on October 20th outside of SD 57, one being an anti-SOGI protest and the other a counter-pro-SOGI protest, as tensions continued to rise on the topic. Caitlin Pobersnick brings us the story.
Government, politicians, and teachers, you don't own our children.
Another protest happened on Saturday for those for and against SOGI, the main theme being, should sexual orientation and gender identity be taught in schools? The anti-SOGI rally made their voices very apparent in front of School District 57.
There is only 2 genders.
Making it clear where they stand.
Personally, I want SOGI ended, and redo this.
And Whitcomb feels that parents should be fully involved in their kids' curriculum to make sure things like SOGI don't come into fruition.
SOGI itself is not curriculum, it's a resource. But I feel personally it's being used as a shield.
Learning about the basics such as math, science, and social studies is what many of the members of the anti-SOGI party want their kids to focus on, not sexual orientation.
Why is this being spoken to young children about? It's just totally inappropriate. It's not necessary. And I think it's just taken a few years for parents to wake up and understand what's actually going on. And my own kids every day was gender this and have multiple relationships, my kids were taught. Experience. Find out who you are.
Whitcomb remembers when she had sex education classes back when she was in school and says things have drastically changed.
Grade 4, I think we learned about anatomy, reproduction. It's, normal relations. I don't know, we didn't learn
like normal.
Well, men and women is a normal marriage union to have children.
The anti-SOGI rally was surprised to see the pro-SOGI group show up to SD 57.
The pro-SOGI, side was going to come down at 10:30. So basically they're crashing our rally.
The pro-SOGI rally was bigger while our camera was present, with supporters preaching the importance of inclusivity.
I will not negotiate human rights. We can talk about all kinds of other things, but when it comes to a matter of like groups saying you don't get rights because this, I can't go there.
And while the anti-SOGI group advocates for greater parental rights, Beauregard believes giving additional rights to a group does not equal equality.
You have human rights, you have rights in our Constitution, you have rights in, BC Human Rights Act, but you're not given extra rights just because you're a parent, because if that's taking away rights from children, then those children are being deprived of their human rights. And that's really the problem for us, is that we could have debate, we could have discussions if it's civil and respectful, which it's not over the last year being that. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about depriving other groups their rights, so you could give more rights to one group, that's not how this works.
According to an article written by Community Commons, teaching and using inclusive languages saves lives. So by incorporating these teachings into schools, it promotes a more welcoming environment.
Kids who are LGBTQ+, or staff, or parents, or members of the community, they feel that they belong. They feel welcome. And my work, the work of my members. So I'm not in a classroom. They like keep saying that I pay my salary. They don't. I work for the union. But our collective work as teachers is to ensure that kids are welcome and belonging and safe. Full stop. And what's under attack over this last year is that safety and belonging for students who are LGBTQ+.
The Saskatchewan legislation just passed a bill preventing children under the age of 16 from changing their names or pronouns at school without receiving parental consent. Caitlin Poversnick, CKPG News.
Next, on Year in Review, bear sightings dominated the news cycle during the summer season. This year was extraordinary, with an unprecedented number of bear sightings in local neighborhoods. So much so that Dave Branco reported that one Prince George resident was asking the city to revisit the bear problem altogether.
The sightings of bears within city limits is becoming too familiar for some residences.
Something has to be done about bears. We have bear problems every day here in the heart. And I just heard another bear got hit on the road out here. So it's a real big problem.
The escalating number of bears encounters have forced one resident to ask the city council to allocate the necessary resources to deal with the bear problem. According to Langen, bear-human interactions compromise public safety and endanger bears. He recommends 3 ideas to reduce bear conflict. 1. Renew public awareness campaign. 2. Better bear-proof bins. And the third is strengthen compliance and enforcement measures.
There's a $300 fine if you've got bear attractors in your yard. I'm not sure how many times that's actually happened, but I don't think there's enough staff in the bylaws enforcement to really do a comprehensive job. This has to be a high priority. Get out there and do it. And this year is so far beyond anything that we can tolerate over the long term. Something has to be done.
BC Conservation Officer Eamon MacArthur has been overwhelmed by residents' worries regarding bear sightings. While the 4 officers in Prince George have had to sort through 1,600 calls received regarding black bears since the start of August.
At this point in time, our traps are dancing around the city from spot to spot to try and be the most efficient as possible. And we're responding to as many calls as we can, but quite frankly, just because you want to speak to a CO, at this point in time, it just doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's going to be based on a triage system.
According to MacArthur, black bears are more scavengers than hunters, and they seek the most accessible food source.
There are a lot of apples. There's a lot of crab apples. There's berries. There's even ornamental trees that the bears are feeding on. And just because there's a bear in your tree eating those does not necessarily mean that bear is going to be euthanized. In fact, there's probably less likelihood that the bear will be euthanized. More often than not, we do try, depending on location, obviously, we do try and have those bears move on their own as naturally as possible if we can. And then once those bears are gone, we ask that the homeowners or whomever clear that tree of the food source. Because once there's no food, the bear may come back a second time just to double check because he knew he got fed there the last time. But once that food is gone, then the bear should move on naturally.
In the first 3 weeks of August, due to aggressive, threatening behaviors, being highly habituated, and food conditioned to unnatural food sources, the CEOs have euthanized approximately 21 bears.
It's sad to say, but a lot of this is the fault of the public, not managing garbage, not managing things, and it's not just the individual homeowner. I'm talking companies. There's businesses that don't have the most secure means of securing their garbage, and these are things that we're looking at, and we're working with the city Prince George bylaws to try and hold people that are doing this accountable.
Dave Branco, CKPG News.
It was quite an eventful week in mid-September at the Prince George Golf and Curling Club as a sow and 2 bear cubs had been hanging out around the 16th hole. And on the 15th of the month, they were taken away. Cheryl Jan has the story.
It's not something you see on a golf course every day, but these 2 bear cubs were reunited with their mom after a week of hanging out at the Prince George Golf and Curling Club.
Yeah, it's a quiet place. There's some crabapple trees. And it's a safe place. There's been a lot of large boars around the Prince George area, and I feel that this family unit just wanted to feel safe. As far as golf courses go, it's relatively quiet. There are some big roads around, but not close enough to make the bears worry. And there's enough trees for them to hide out the nights in.
It took some coaxing to get the two from the tree, a place cubs typically seek when scared.
Basically, when you scare a bear and it goes up a tree, you're not going to scare them out of the tree generally. They're only going to come out if they want to come out.
But it almost went unnoticed on the course, as it was business as usual with a few modifications.
Well, it's affected the play in the sense that, working with the conservation officer, of course, we wanted the bear left to their own. So we've rerouted the holes and we made some changes. Predominantly the bears stayed in one location, so it wasn't too problematic for us. As luck would have it, the bears set up residence on a hole where we had an alternate option, so we're using that option in the interim.
A golf course is not out of the realm of possibility for refuge, though not common.
Not usually in Prince George, but I mean, it very well could. It's a very big green space. There's a lot, as I said, there's lots of trees. There's some food sources. The grass is well tailored, and they'll graze on the grass till the cows come home. So, and I mean, it depends on what's going on, right? Like if they're using it as an interim place, and they're just going to move on. But it's as with most bears, when the food source is gone, they tend to move on.
The bears have been around noisy golf carts and equally noisy golfers all week, but MacArthur says these three have not likely been habituated to humans regardless.
I mean, there's always that possibility with urban bears, but as far as these bears go, we didn't have any history of unnatural food association. So that habituation was to natural foods like these crabapple trees and stuff in the background, and we've spoken to the golf course about those already. So.
The three will be taken from the course to a bear sanctuary in Smithers, safe and sound. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.
After the break on Year in Review, we moved to industry news focused on several Canfor mill closures. In late January, the dust was still settling on news that Canfor would be shutting down operations in Chetwynd and making major changes in Houston as well. Caden Fanshaw reported on the impacts felt by communities and the forestry fallout that would continue throughout 2023 in BC.
From above, it's easy to understand how Canfor's sawmill and pellet plant has been the heart of Chetwynd for 60 years. Now the latest forestry operation to shutter in a series of changes by Canfor.
Terrible, it's horrible. We could use all the words that go with that kind of feeling, but it doesn't give us back the opportunity of having the mill. So when a company comes in and permanently says, we're done, that effect is harsh on a community.
The loss of the mill here this spring means the loss of over 150 jobs for the community.
That part sure tugs on the heart, because the feeling of somebody losing something.
With even more set to feel the ripples as the economy of yet another northern BC forestry-based town gets set to take a big hit.
Yesterday, of course, with the announcements that you just alluded to, it was a real difficult day for sure.
The company says the change was needed due to the available fiber in the area.
I think we all know that there's been significant decreases in annual allowable cut over a number of years for a number of different reasons. And so we're trying to adjust, so that we can be sure that we've got a sustainable business for the future and don't have to take some of the downtime that we've had to take, as you know, more than we'd like to.
The changes announced by Canfor Wednesday will also signal a major shift in Houston. What was first introduced is a super mill set to shutter this spring to make way for a new Canfor facility there.
It's not like we're walking away from BC at all. There's a lot of reasons why BC is important to us as a company and will continue to be in the future. And I just want to make sure that I mentioned that as well, because it is something that we treat extremely serious.
The changes in operations leading to even further questions about what's ahead for BC's forestry sector. One expert who's kept tabs for over 20 years points out big changes are needed.
I do think the government needs to be very bold in trying to fix this problem.
The longtime Faculty of Forestry professor calls the recent $150 million thrown at the industry a drop in the bucket.
The elastoplast solutions, you put a Band-Aid here, Band-Aid there, not going to work very well. It will help, but it won't solve the problem. And I think there are a number of different problems that need to be addressed. And I think the role that First Nations are going to play is going to be huge.
With the price of lumber in a slump, experts and critics warn more changes could be imminent. Caden Fanshaw, CKPG News.
Now, months later in May, a trio of mills in our region were also victims to curtailments as challenges related to fiber supply continued. Caden Fanshaw brought us the continued message from industry and local mayors that were waiting for answers.
Logs continue to roll onto the line here at Lakeland Mills, but there will be less of this over the coming months as Sinclair Group Forest Products announces curtailments, one stretching weeks in Prince George and Fort St. James, but months in Vanderhoof.
It really is tough as a town. Obviously, it's tough on the families of the workers at the mill site, but also the contractors in the bush. But we also see it ripple very fast through the retail community, through other sectors of town, and yeah, it definitely has a major effect quite fast.
Not long ago, at the BC Council of Forest Industries conference in BC's northern capital, one C word was used repetitively.
I think the vital message that I've heard, certainly from the sector, is predictability.
According to the opposition, one thing is certain: there hasn't been enough action.
To be fair, can this all be avoided? Probably not. But we see nothing to actually give certainty to those that are just wanting to stay operational.
According to the mayor, 85% of Vanderhoof's timber supply area is made up of pine. 85% of that pine was lost in the beetle kill, a factor Moutre believes is contributing to this downturn. But it's a lot more complicated than that.
I think there are issues that aren't getting across to the province, but you know, some of the other issues are local. Of course, the whole fiber pricing has been broken for decades, and so that's not a new issue. And every government's had a kick at the can, and would like to see some movement, but this isn't a new problem.
Permitting, part of the puzzle too, a problem the Premier himself said he's aware of and working on.
Maintain our high standards, but we're going to reform the permitting process to make sure that it's timely, that it's predictable for people, and that it works.
This curtailment is significant, not only because of the sheer duration of it, but it emphasizes, no matter the operation or the company, everyone is feeling the effects of a forestry sector at a pinching point.
I'm hoping that this information getting out there at some point will pressure government to realize that if they don't step up and do something, then next week it's going to be another mill, and the week after it's going to be another mill and another community. And you know, this is devastating for the families, you know, and that's what we always have to remember. These are people, these are jobs, these are families that are affected.
Caden Fanshaw, CKPG News.
But it wasn't all bad news for industry in 2023, as in March it was announced that the Artemis Blackwater mine, located southwest of Prince George, would go ahead after receiving the green light from the province. As Caden Fanshaw reported, we were also given the first look at how many jobs the project was expected to bring to the region.
We're very excited to be in a position now to start construction.
After nearly a decade of waiting, the Blackwater Mine project, located southwest of Prince George, will go ahead as the province grants permitting approval for the $13.2 billion operation.
Demonstration of how we can have environmentally responsible mining done in this new era of reconciliation, working directly with First Nations. It creates vibrant and incredible inclusive economic opportunities for people, employment, and will benefit not just the region, but really all of British Columbia.
New figures from Artemis Gold show the project will create over 450 direct full-time jobs over the 22-year operating life of the mine, with over 825 direct full-time jobs created just during construction.
First step is the commencement of the construction activities. As you may be aware, we have been working at the project site for some time. We've completed site preparation work for our plant site. So the next step will be to bring our construction people onto site and perhaps even as early as next month start pouring concrete.
The province and the minister have taken a lot of criticism over permit delays for this project, but are quick to point out it creates a template at a time when many argue more economic diversity is needed.
British Columbia is really blessed with natural resources, and we have a strong and long history of being able to use materials and provide those benefits for people, not just here in British Columbia, but across the world. And our natural resource sector is changing, but there's still incredible opportunity.
This project expected to have loads of economic spin-off as well, with Vanderhoof at the epicenter.
Feels great. You know, it's been such a long journey to get here, and lots of ups and downs on the way. And I think the whole town is just ecstatic that we're finally at this day.
After a lot of anticipation, the roughly 2-year construction period is set to begin immediately for the largest gold mine development project in the Cariboo region of BC in more than a decade. Caden Fanshaw, CKPG News.
When we return, the controversial decampment of Millennium Park went down in September. Welcome back to Year in Review. On September 7th, the process got underway to decamp Millennium Park with support people on hand to help. But there were still many questions surrounding where people in the park would go and what would happen after the week's end. Cheryl Jan reporting.
The semi-trucks were on location at First and George once again today, helping those in the Millennium Park camp move out of that location.
This encampment's been going for over a year, but it's transient. People come and go, but there's people here who have been here for up to 6 months, and it's their living situation, it's their community, it's human beings interacting and having a functional community, and they're peaceful. I mean, as peaceful can be when addiction is involved.
Following the last council meeting, council agreed to have the Millennium Park camp removed no later than September 9th.
We as a government, as a city, as well as the BC government, we're not in the business of moving people from encampment to encampment. We are in the, hopefully we work together, we can move people from encampment to housing.
The city's assertion is that the camp is unsafe, with emergency personnel unable to access the site if needed. But Philip Fredrickson says there was already a move afoot to decamp.
It was mentioned that there was no access for emergency vehicles to go in. However, it was immediately cleaned up by the residents that are in the encampment, and space was made for emergency vehicles to come in, but they had already told us they were going to decamp.
But the fire department issued notice that as of 4:35 this afternoon, they would be at the camp to remove fire hazards. But there are those who admittedly will not want to leave this camp, and what happens in that case is worrisome to Fredrickson.
I keep hearing different things about what's going to happen. So I've heard that bylaw and police are going to come in on Monday. I've heard that tomorrow bylaw and police are coming in. I haven't gotten a definite answer from anybody. But my concern is if people do decide to stay, the forceful removal will cause a lot of drama.
While Millennium Park is not beholden to the court order covering Moccasin Flats, it becomes an interesting dynamic for the city.
And for the city to demonstrate to the court that we have enough sufficient housing matches the number of people on the street, we need to have a proper data. And so BC Housing and together with our city team, they're working very closely together to make sure that these two numbers exist so we can go to the court and say, look, we have insufficient housing for everybody.
In the meantime, through the course of the day, individuals at Millennium Park have packed up their possessions to move to their new home, wherever that may be. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.
Then, just days later, on September 12th, the encampment at Millennium Park was officially removed, with many occupants moving to Moccasin Flats, and it had support workers working double time to help prepare. Once again, Cheryl Jan brought us the story.
What has become known as Moccasin Flats has grown in the past few days, with some, but not all, of the folks from Millennium Park being transplanted there.
I don't know. I think one person got sheltered. We're working really hard to get the couple that got arrested into some type of housing. We actually put them up in a hotel room yesterday because of the trauma they went through. They don't feel safe down here, like I said. Like, there's a lot of reasons, different reasons why people stay different spaces. Majority of everyone that was at Millennial are just spread out all over the city now.
Mayor Simon Yu says he's aware of how upset folks were at the way the whole matter was handled, but he's happy with the outcome.
I'm just glad the operation went relatively smooth, and there is no violence, and there was nobody got hurt. And both for the people in the encampment, as well as for the for the people, our staff working on that. That I'm very grateful. It was a peaceful process.
But Cadieux says the timeline was challenging to move people out of the Millennium Park site.
It was really challenging to get everything down and undo their homes in time and brought down here. Not everybody's comfortable coming down here because, having two different parks creates a sense of safety for different reasons.
However, the mayor sympathizes with the plight of the folks at the former Millennium Park camp and now Moccasin Flats.
The people out there on the street, it's not by choice. They have no place to go. So we will be working very, very hard with the BC Housing, the government, to make sure before the winter comes, all the people on the street have a safe, warm place to go to.
In the meantime, back at Moccasin Flats, the United Northern Drug Users is working double time to ensure services are available.
So we've been working really hard getting materials so that we can pound out little homes for winter, because winter is right around the corner. So we need hands for that. And again, the porta potties, we got the inhalation space, we do provide harm reduction supplies, we do overdose response, we provide wound care. We've provided 13 people first aid training.
Millennium Park has been fenced and will remain closed to the public until further notice. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.
Next on Year in Review, there was a high number of homicides in Prince George this year. Welcome back as we finish things up here on our Year in Review. As of August, 8 homicides had already taken place in Prince George, making it one of the deadliest years on record up to that point. Adam Burrell spoke to PG's top cop as well as a leading criminologist to discuss the concerning trend and its potential connection to the illicit drug trade.
One of the deadliest years in the last quarter century. That is the title that Prince George currently holds right now, as 8 homicides have been recorded so far this year. Superintendent Sean Wright with the Prince George RCMP says that with an increase in violent crime, this trend is concerning.
We are seeing an increase in violent crime for this year, so obviously that's concerning to us. One of the developments we've had is the provincial government's rollout of the repeat violent offender program. So in conjunction with Crown Council and probation and some other agencies, we've been getting engaged with that over the last few months as that's started up, and we've had some very good successes with some of the first repeat violent candidates that have entered into that program. They've been detained in custody for several months now, so that's definitely a positive start to that.
Superintendent Wright says 5 of the homicides had a common link.
We did find a bit of a disturbing trend from last year and into some of the early homicides we had this year with the involvement of drug trafficking groups from the Lower Mainland. So that conflict that's been going on down there for some time is definitely expanding province-wide, and we're starting to see the effects of that and that conflict up here as well.
Statistics Canada data shows that this is the worst year for homicides in and around Prince George in 25 years, and we're barely halfway through it. In 1998, for example, there were only 2 homicides in total for the year. In 2001, there was only 1, and in 2004, there were 6. Another deadly year was in 2010, when there were 7 homicides recorded, resulting in the city being labeled as Canada's most dangerous city by Maclean's magazine. This year, 5 out of 8 homicides have been linked to drugs, and with the link to the Lower Mainland, Dr. Robert Gordon, a criminologist with Simon Fraser University, believes that groups may be competing for control.
What's happened in that area is that the industry on the supply side has been well established over the years. There are competing groups, and from time to time they engage in violent activity, which is linked to control over the industry. And I think I've just been looking at some stuff today on crime in Prince George, and it's clear that this is recognized as being one of the major drivers of crime up there.
Dr. Gordon says that Prince George is a desirable location for the drug trade and for the trafficking of illicit drugs.
That's one of the reasons why I think the murders have been taking place. These are internal conflicts, right? They're internal conflicts on the supply. Occasionally you get murders on the consumption side where you've got disputes between distributors. But most of this stuff, I wager, I don't know for sure, but I would wager most of the killings that are taking place in Prince George are related to the supply side of the drug trade.
The RCMP says that all 8 homicides appear to be targeted and that they are working diligently to identify those responsible for the recent spike in violence. Adam Burles, CKPG News.
Well, that wraps things up here for our CKPG News 2023 Year in Review. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we also hope you continue to follow CKPG News for all your local stories next year. Have a happy new year, folks, and we'll see you in 2024.